Well, welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. You know, I have a friend who is in charge of Operation Blessing, Bill Horan. His hobby is target shooting. He loves to shoot. So he said, would you like to join me? And I said, yeah, let's do it. And so he's got some special .22 rifles. I haven't shot a rifle in a long, long time, but we went to a shooting range.
How'd you do?
Well, I want to show the target. And if you give me a close-up, and if you can see right here, there were 4 shots inside one another, and that's the bullseye. I had a couple till I got sighted in.
Yeah. You know, if you frame this, you could put a little name on it that says, "Don't mess with me."
Well, they had a name, a particular leading senator who will I'll not identify. They said, I used to have...
They put up there?
Yeah, they said, that's who you're shooting. I used to have Osama bin Laden. I hit him right between the eyes. But since he's gone, but anyhow... they thought
well
that
done.
I haven't shot a rifle
done.
in the longest kind of time, but I've got a little bit of stuff left.
I'd say you got a lot of stuff left.
This
there.
was, I think, at the end of the range was all the way back. They said 50 yards, I think, but
wow,
not bad.
Go you! Was it fun?
Oh, of course it's fun. It's a lot of fun. You know, I take a little time off, but I have burnished my credentials with the NRA. So if you happen to be looking, I may have a lifetime membership. If not, they ought to make sure I'm a member.
You qualify.
All right. Listen, the government got out of control. When the head man is bypassed, his second in command recuses himself, and the third in command takes it upon himself to appoint a former head of the FBI to conduct a probe of his boss. That's what happens. And there's no evidence whatsoever that the Russians involved themselves in the Trump campaign. People have tried and tried and tried. They haven't been able to get it. But yet we have now commissioned a man who's, they say, impeccable credentials, but we're going to give him an unlimited budget. He's got a fishing license to go anybody he wants to. And for the next maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, he's going to be out there probing and holding hearings and probing and holding hearings and probing and holding hearings. And you tell me we want to get a tax cut through? No way. Health care? No way. Reform government? No way. Build infrastructure? No way. It's going to cripple the Trump presidency unless God himself intervenes. And the markets responded immediately to it. The Dow Jones, the 500 went down, precipitously. The Dow went down a dramatic amount yesterday. But if they succeed, if the Democrats succeed, I want to say this as clearly as possible, we're going to have one of the most horrendous financial crashes in the history of America. We're teetering on the brink right now. And this would be all it would take to send this whole country and the world into a tailspin from which it will be unable to recover. We're talking about playing with fire. And it's like a bunch of kids who have got some matches and they're in the middle of a oil depot and they're playing with matches. And these kids are up there, they're playing. There's nothing that Trump has done that justifies all this. And there's been no crime that anybody can sell me, yet we've got somebody, and, as they say, if your only weapon is the hammer, then everything looks like a nail. And so they're going to bang away and find something, unless God himself intervenes, okay?
Well, the announcement of that special counsel and the investigation came on the eve of President Trump's first major international trip. He's traveling to the Middle East and Europe. And now there's word that the president has ruled out moving the United States Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, for now at least. Mark Martin has the story of all these developments.
Former FBI Director Robert Mueller's appointment was met with praise from both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, obviously that's a step in the right direction.
This takes the politics out of it, hopefully. This has gotten too political.
In naming Mueller, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein said in a statement that he wanted someone to, quote, oversee the previously confirmed FBI investigation of Russian government efforts to influence the 2016 presidential election and related matters. My decision is not a finding that crimes have been committed or that any prosecution is warranted. I've made no such determination. What I have determined is that based upon the unique circumstances, the public interest requires me to place this investigation under the authority of a person who exercises a degree of independence from the normal chain of command. Mueller served as FBI director from 2001 to 2013. In a statement, Mueller said, "I accept this responsibility and will discharge it to the best of my ability."
Whatever investigation goes on will have the credibility of Bob Mueller, the former director of the FBI.
President Trump also issued a statement about the special counsel appointment, saying, "As I have stated many times, a thorough investigation will confirm what we already know. There was no collusion between my campaign and any foreign entity. I look forward to this matter concluding quickly." During a Wednesday commencement address to the United States Coast Guard, the president blasted the media.
Look at the way I've been treated lately, especially by the media. No politician in history has been treated worse or more unfairly.
The appointment of a special counsel comes as Trump is about to embark on his first overseas trip as president, heading to Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the Vatican, and amid reports that the president has decided against moving the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, at least for now. And despite that important trip, along with his plans for tax reform and repealing and replacing Obamacare, the Russian investigation could remain in the headlines for some time to come. Mark Martin, CBN News.
Well, our CBN News political correspondent David Brody is with us. And by the way, David, you're set to take off with Trump for his Middle East trip in another few days, huh?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we leave later tonight, Thursday evening, actually, Pat, and so that'll be interesting. It's the World Religion Tour, Pat, Saudi Arabia, Jerusalem, Rome, and then we're out. Then we're coming back, and boy, it's going to be very interesting, especially as it relates to what the president's going to say about Islam. He's going to speak to 50 leaders of Muslim-majority countries. And by the way, Pat, I should mention that Stephen Miller, who has worked for Jeff Sessions, who's worked for Michelle Bachmann, very conservative, he's writing that Islam speech. So get ready for some potential fighting words, if you will. I mean, I know he has to play the part with Saudi Arabia as a strategic partner fighting terrorism, but there will probably be some toxic language in there, I would think.
All right, you're talking to people. I think appointing a special prosecutor or counsel, they call him, is a terrible mistake because you're taking him out of the chain of command. He no longer reports to anybody. He's an independent, and he can do anything he wants to. What do you hear up there in Washington, the people you're talking to?
Well, you don't really hear much talk about bipartisanship except when it comes to this. I mean, you've got Republicans that are, in essence, throwing Trump under the bus, and then you've got Democrats who are all giddy at this naming of the special counsel. And so, look, it is somewhat bipartisan up here. They think Mueller's a guy that has done a superb job in the FBI before. And look, this guy's a Marine, and he's from New York, and he's no nonsense. And he's good friends, by the way, ... Pat, with James Comey. So let's go marinate on that for a little while. And so this is not a good situation for the White House at all. And as you said at the top of the show, this could go on for a very long time. I mean, look, Mueller could actually go ahead and subpoena Donald Trump's tax returns if he really wanted to. The point is he's got wide authority here.
Well, in a sense, what crime has anybody found? They've looked and looked and looked, and nobody yet has found any relationship between the Trump campaign and Russia. I don't understand all this business. We're going to, quote, get to the bottom of it. To what?
Well, it's a great point, Pat. As a matter of fact, Reuters is out with a story this morning saying there are 18 new phone calls and communications between the Trump campaign team and Russian officials. That's their big headline, that there were these 18 phone calls. Well, if you read in the third paragraph of that story, it says, oh, by the way, during those phone call conversations, there really wasn't anything improper done. So the point is, but of course that's not the headline. So ultimately, look, Donald Trump actually could have a big upside here, believe it or not, eventually. And what I mean by that is if Mueller comes back and says, look, I can't file any criminal charges here, well, then Donald Trump has taken on the D.C. establishment and won, and he'll go down and as a hero and a victim of all of this, and he actually could cement his status even more, but he's got to get through the next, who knows how long this is going to be. Could be a couple of years here, Pat.
Well, what happens to the agenda? What happens to tax reform? What happens to the Obamacare reform? What happens to infrastructure spending? Where does that all go? Is that just going to limbo, do you think?
Yeah, I think limbo is a good word for it. That might be a kind word for it, actually. Look, it's very hard to walk and chew gum up here at the same time. Congress not very good at that. Now you're going to add all of these subpoenas and congressional hearings and all of this that's going to come with the special counsel, and it's going to be very, very difficult. Having said that, they're going to move forward. And the question then becomes, if they can get tax reform done, which once again they believe they can get something done by the end of the year, health care, we're not quite sure about how that's going to work in the Senate. Maybe something by Labor Day or so. But if one of those legislative accomplishments comes through, then it becomes a new day for Donald Trump. But at this point, he needs desperately a legislative accomplishment. At this point, Pat, it's become, the degree of difficulty has become much more harder at this point.
There's talk about shouting in the White House between the various press types. Some talk about replacing Sean Spicer. Well, what do you hear about that?
There is some of that. I don't think there's any question about it, because Donald Trump is trying to figure out what exactly to do, not just with the communications staff, but just overall in terms of a staff shakeup. Here's part of the problem, Pat. He's a very loyal guy. And potentially even to a fault, to where he wants to keep folks on a little bit longer than maybe they should be there. So I think there's some discussions about that. But I'll be quite frank with you. I think that's the least of this president's worries right now, the communication staff. You see, here's the crux of the issue as it relates to Donald Trump. The freewheeling Donald Trump when he was candidate was wonderful. He played great. He was the outsider. But a freewheeling president of the United States is a different matter. And when you're slapping guys on the back and saying, hey, let's talk about some information I heard about ISIS to Russian officials in the Oval Office, I mean, Trump's kind of operating like this is a boardroom. The problem is there's people out to get him. There's people inside the White House. There's intelligence folks, the media. That's a bad trinity, if you will, Pat. And it's one thing to take on the media, but he's got to take on people actually within the White House, believe it or not, and the intelligence community. Not good.
Well, David, you've got a fun trip ahead of you. I guess, are you going to be embargoed? Can you tell us stuff as you go down the line?
Well, right. So there are a couple things, right? We have that trip going to Saudi Arabia, Jerusalem, and Rome. We'll start reporting on the 700 Club next week. And, of course, over the weekend on CBNNews.com. But also, later this afternoon, I'm at this network anchor luncheon. I guess you put that in quotes. Scott Pelley and Lester Holt and all their deep voices will be there. And yours truly, I will be there as well. And it's off the record with the President of the United States and some of his senior administration officials at the White House. But I can tell you right now, off the record will quickly turn into a lot of leaks coming out of what the president is probably going to say. And I would expect a few stories later this afternoon.
Well, we'll look forward to them. Dave, thanks so much. Stay with it.
You bet.
And we've just heard that Roger Ailes, the former CEO of Fox News, died this morning. His wife said in a statement on the Drudge Report that he was a loving husband, a patriot, and a loyal friend. You know, it's a shame. He was a media genius, but unfortunately, his proclivity for liking beautiful young women did him in. And I'm sorry to see, I mean, I like Fox News, but it looks like they were really losing out. They're losing out in the target demos to MSNBC. And there is just turmoil in that network, and it was so profitable. They were billing about $1.5 billion a year for a cable network. It was unbelievable. And then they've just eased out one after the other. And Roger Ailes, as I say, was a genius. And I'm sure that those who love good television would mourn his passing. So I didn't know him personally. I've said hi to him. That's about it.
Yeah, was that unexpected?
Well, you know, you look at somebody and they're a heart attack waiting to happen. You know, overweight, you know, no exercise, the whole
Stress,
thing.
yeah.
Stressed, a lot of stress, and that's a killer, and that's what happens.